We have a special order today, so we're going to start with AB-939, but before 931, excuse me. Before we do that, I want to announce changes to the agenda. Number 21, item 21, AB-2302 has been pulled. Other than that, the remaining agenda stays as is printed. And with that, Ms. Weber, you can come to the table. Oh, and as you bring your witnesses up, I'd just like to ask those in our hearing room that in order for the members to hear testimony and to be able to discuss and properly hear and vet the bill, we don't really use this room for the cheering or booing. So if you could respect, I know that there will be opinions expressed that everyone in the room won't necessarily agree with. That happens. That's normal discourse. So if you could hold your cheers and boos and support by American Sign Language. And then each side will get an opportunity to be heard. And I would really appreciate if everyone is respectful of that. And we will have Ms. Weber begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Before I start, I want to accept the committee's amendments. I would like to thank the chair and her staff for working with my staff and our sponsors on the various amendments. We think they make the bill stronger and more direct. I'm here to present AB 931, the Police Accountability and Community Protection Act. This bill seeks to change California's legal standard for when police can use deadly force to match best practices already in place at some departments. The power of the police officers is to use deadly force is perhaps the most significant responsibility we confer on any public official, and it must be guided by the goals of safeguarding human life. However, current law sanctions police use of deadly force even when officers do not face an imminent threat to life or bodily security, and even when officers have reasonable alternatives at their disposal to safely address a situation without taking anyone's life. California's existing law governing more when a homicide by an officer is, quote, justified was written in 1872. This code, being the single oldest unamended use of force statute in the country, not only fails to include best practices, but authorize deadly force that violates the U.S. Constitution. This results in police killing more people in California than in any other state. In 2017, officers shot and killed 162 people in California, only half of whom were armed with guns, and killed more than 20 others using other types of force. AB 931 is about preventing unnecessary deaths by clarifying law enforcement's obligation when making the decision to use deadly force. This bill limits the use of deadly force by a police officer to those situations where it is necessary to prevent imminent and serious bodily injury or death to the officer or another person. This bill is squarely in line with best practices and standards recognized by academies, academics, and experts in the field, and are modeled after policies that are currently in place at several law enforcement agencies around the country. AB 931 is sponsored by the ACLU, Policy Link, PICO, Youth Justice Coalition, Anti-Police Terror Project, and Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, and the Alliance of Boys and Men of Color. This bill has a long list of supporters, as you've seen, including the SEIU, the NAACP, the California Nurses Association, the Immigrant Rights Group, and faith-based organizations. Here to testify in support of AB 931 are Professor Seth Slaughton, who's a law professor at the University of South Carolina and a former police officer, Pastor Les Simmons with PICO, California, and Sacramento Act, Ellie Vetureta, which is the Youth Justice Coalition coordinator, and for technical assistance, Peter Biebring, which is from the ACLU. Okay.
Before you allow your witnesses to proceed, I'd like to establish quorum.
Okay.
Skinner.
I'm here.
Skinner here. Anderson. Bradford. Bradford here. Jackson.
Here.
Jackson here. Mitchell. Here. Mitchell here. Stone. Stone here. Wiener.
All right, and for the witnesses, since we obviously have a lot of people in the audience who's going to want to come to the mic, and I'm imagining that we're going to have questions on the dais, if you could be respectful of the time and not be repetitive to the other witness. I don't like to just impose unnecessary time limits, but if anyone goes on beyond what I think is reasonable, I'm going to interrupt you, okay? So, but you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Seth Stoughton. I'm here to testify in support of AB-931. I'm a law professor at the University of South Carolina. I've spent the last half-dozen years studying the regulation of policing. I'm also a former police officer. My testimony in support of the bill is grounded not only in my academic research, but also in my own experiences conducting stops, making arrests, and using force. The current law, Penal Code 196, is painfully outdated. It retains an approach to deadly force that has been rejected by the vast majority of the states and by the Supreme Court. 931, in contrast, lays out a feasible and appropriate standard for regulating police uses of deadly force. It states that deadly force is justified when it is necessary to address an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Some commentators have objected to the word necessary. They may not be aware that current state law uses the same word. Penal Code 196 permits the use of deadly force only when it is necessarily committed for specified purposes. More importantly, though, is how 931 defines necessary. As defined by 931, the use of deadly force is necessary when, given the totality of the circumstances, a reasonable officer would conclude that there was no reasonable alternative that could address the threat of death or great bodily harm. What does the bill mean by totality of the circumstances? 931 does not judge an officer's actions by using information that the officer could not have been aware of. Instead, it defines totality of the circumstances as all facts reasonably known to the officer at the time. So deadly force is permitted when, under the facts reasonably known to the officer at the time, a reasonable officer would conclude that there was no reasonable alternative to the use of deadly force. What is a reasonable alternative? 931 does not require officers to go down an imaginary checklist. It defines instead reasonable alternatives as those that do not unreasonably increase the threat posed to the officer or another person. The bill provides a short and non-exclusive list of what may, in appropriate situations, be considered a reasonable alternative. It should not be controversial to suggest that if a reasonable officer would perceive that there was a way to safely address a threat without using deadly force, that that alternative is preferable to the taking of a human life. Importantly, for both the determination of whether there was an imminent threat and great bodily harm, and whether there were any reasonable alternatives, the relevant standard under 931 is what a reasonable officer on the scene would perceive. In short, under 931, the use of deadly force is justified if a reasonable officer would conclude that there is no alternative that could safely address an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. This is a feasible, appropriate, and reasonable standard that will save the lives of, of community members and officers alike. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Eli Virueta. I'm an organizer with the Youth Justice Coalition, and I'm here to ask you to vote yes on AB 931. I'm speaking on behalf of my family and all the families who are here because we lost our loved ones to law enforcement, as well as thousands of families who weren't able to come today. In September of 2012, when I was 16, my aunt texted me to say that my cousin Junior had been killed. He was shot and killed, but little did we know that it was at the hands of law enforcement. My cousin was only 14. He would have been celebrating his 21st birthday this year, but instead, he's buried deep underground. We don't have many details about what had happened, but we do know that the stop by police lasted only a brief moment before my cousin was shot twice in the lower body. Junior was crawling away from the officers when he was shot 2 more times in the back and once behind the head near his ear. We know that when we went to the scene, we saw a small pool of blood where he was first hit, and then we saw a trail of blood when he was crawling away. And then finally, we saw a large pool of blood where he finally died. We know that one of the officers involved in the shooting stated that he shot in part because he saw a blank stare in my cousin's eyes. And we also know that from police statements in the DA's report that there was, that there was no de-escalation strategies used by police at the scene. There was no attempt to take cover while questioning my cousin, no call for mental health or other resources, And finally, we know that the police officers at the scene did nothing to stop my cousin's bleeding, resuscitate him, or apply any other medical aid. California leads the nation in deadly use of force. Law enforcement officers kill more people in California than in any other state. In 2017 alone, law enforcement in California shot and killed 162 people. Half of the people were not armed with any type of gun. Of the 15 law enforcement agencies with the highest per capita rates of use of force killings in the U.S., 5 are in California. They are Bakersfield, Stockton, Santa Ana, where my cousin was killed, San Bernardino, and Long Beach. Kern County has the highest of law enforcement use of force killings in the nation. LA County leads the nation in use of force homicides with at least 851 people killed between January of 2000 and December of 2017. LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department lead all other departments in the highest number of deaths. In 2017, LAPD killed 3 times as many people as the New York Police Department, even though LAPD only has 1/4 as many police. LA County is 9% black, but 28% of the people that were killed are black. In the U.S., law enforcement kills young, unarmed black men at a rate 20 times higher than they kill young, unarmed white men. California's law governing homicides by public officials, Penal Code 196, was passed in 1872 and has not been amended since. It was passed at a time when California had the highest lynching rates in the nation, passed at a time when 90% of Native people in our state were killed. It was also passed 1 year after the largest mass lynching in U.S. history, the Chinese massacre in downtown LA, when a mob led by law enforcement and the mayor's office hung 15 Chinese men, 2 women, and 1 child in the streets. Many more people were killed, and Chinatown was burned to the ground. This old law governing use of force is far below the standard set by a U.S. Constitution or the standard outlined by the United States Supreme Court. Is this the best place where California can be in 2018? Be just where we were 146 years ago? What happened to all of our families? All of our family members was barely discussed in the news. Most of the time, our family members, the victims, their names were just reduced to a few lines in a DA's report and a police statement. But for our families, for my family, the deaths last us a lifetime. Every birthday, every holiday, every celebration is hollow, and every family gathering is filled with pain. And all killings and deaths are traumatic, but it's especially hard when a life is taken by those who are supposed to protect and serve. I hope that everybody here will always get to go home, hug your children if you have any, and watch them grow and have children of their own. But that's a privilege that the families today don't have. We still have to fight, and we still have to tell our stories, because we are our voices of our loved ones. Because deadly use of force victims in California, there will never be justice, and we'll never have closure. So we are urging you to please vote yes on AB 931. It actually has the potential to save lives. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Les Simmons. I'm a leader with Pico, California, as well as a local leader with Sacramento ACT, area congregations with over 65 different supported congregations within the city. I'm a pastor, I'm a community leader. At one point, I was the chair for the Police Commission's Advisory Commission for the City of Sacramento. I helped build Cops and Clergy at one point to start a better relationship with law enforcement. Let me just think back for a moment. 2014, August 9th, Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And we all saw that as a nation. I remember getting called by some friends and flying out to Ferguson and walking the streets and really getting a feel for what was going on. And coming back to Sacramento and being said, well, that's not Sacramento. Ferguson isn't Sacramento. And I remember saying, okay, let's have some dialogue about it. And after talking with some police fellows, one of them said, Michael Brown had it coming. And I had to say to him, so a young man loses his life over a pack of cigarettes or some false accusation. And he said, yeah, he had it coming. And then in Sacramento, Joseph Mann happened. In Sacramento, Lorenzo Cruz, Dejan Flano, Ryan Ellis, Desmond Phillips, Stephon Clark. Let me say that again. Stephon Clark. And then most recently, Brandon Smith. And the list goes on. These are not just names. We can't just say anymore, California, Sacramento, isn't Ferguson. The blood is on our hands to envision a future together where our young men and women, black and brown, poor, wealthy, can live a long life after an encounter with law enforcement. As a faith leader, I could no longer be a chaplain to a failing system to stand on the scene and pardon the wrong. We have to be visionary leaders, envisioning what tomorrow looks like for generations to come. This bill hasn't been touched since 1870-something. The last I know, bills that were created back then weren't created in my favor. They were created to hurt us. It is up to us as Californians, it's up to us as Sacramentans to reimagine our future together, one that allows for our kids, our children's children, one that allows for law enforcement to be safe as well. We need guardians, not warriors. We need protectors, not cops and robbers style policing. We stand in support of AB-931 and hope you approve it today. Demand you, push you, request you to approve it today. Thank you.
Next witness.
That was it.
Okay. Apologies. Thank you. So before we take questions from the dais, and I know we will have everyone else be able to speak, well, I'll ask you to outline the amendments later. So why don't we have the other witnesses in support? I think we have a mic there in the, and it can be adjusted. So if you're taller, you can just push up the mic like this, and otherwise you can push it down. So if you line up, and what I'd appreciate, since we've had some very powerful testimony, if you could just give your name, if you have an affiliation, and then just yes, yeah, you support or not support 931. All right, and go ahead, first witness, please start.
Natasha Minsker, ACLU of California, proud co-sponsor in support.
That's perfect. Next.
Eric Harris with the California State NAACP, proudly, strongly support.
Thank you.
Dr. Takoi Porter with the National Action Network for Sacramento and National, the Genesis Church in the Melody community where Stephon Clark was shot and killed. Stand in support.
I'm Anthony Robles with the Youth Justice Coalition, and this is Richard Tyson, who was unarmed and killed by Inglewood Police Department, and we strongly support AB 931.
Veronica Nelson, member of Sacramento Realtors, BayPAC, and mother of a black son.
Jared O'Brien, Youth Justice Coalition. I'm here for Gonzalo Martinez, who was killed by the Downey Police Department, and I strongly support.
Kim McGill from the Youth Justice Coalition. We're honored to be co-sponsors. Also here today for DeAndre Brunston, who was shot 81 times by the LA County Sheriffs, left on the porch to die while they medevaced the police dog to the hospital.
Louise Mailer, Amnesty International, in strong support. Thank you.
Rosa Cabrera on behalf of Policy Link and the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color. We're very proud co-sponsors and very proud to support this bill.
Good morning. Glenn Backus for Drug Policy Alliance and Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in strong support.
Petey Perez's grandmother killed by the Richmond police, unarmed, no reason to kill him. I strongly support 931, AB 931.
And I'm the grandfather of Petey Perez, also supporting 931. And the cop already had searched them and he knew that the guy was unarmed, but he shot him anyway.
Erica Rincon on behalf of Policy Link and the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color in strong support. Thank you so much for authoring this important legislation.
Nisha Balaram from the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color and Policy Link, we strongly support. Thank you.
James Sweeney with BayPAC. We strongly support this bill. I personally have served on the Police Review Commission twice, and I can tell you that this is needed not only in California, but all across the nation. We strongly support. Pass AB 931.
My name is Chidozie Easy. I'm with the YJC. I stand for justice for Susie Lopez. I strongly support. Thank you.
My name is Anton Weston, part of YJC. I'm here for Johnny Martinez, who was shot by LA sheriffs. I strongly support this bill.
My name is Khalil Ferguson. I represent the Black community of Sac State. That includes Black Student Union, the National Panhellenic Council at Sacramento State, as well as the undergraduate chapter of Iota Phi Theta, and we strongly support AB 931.
I'm Andrew Muse-Fisher with the League of Women Voters of California, here in strong support.
Calvin Quick, Bay Area student activist, support.
My name is Yamara, and I'm here with Youth Justice Coalition, and I'm here for Ezell Ford.
Edward with the YJC in strong support.
Madam Chair, members, Jacob Moss on behalf of Public Health Advocates in support.
Good morning, Darcy Varney with the Greater Sacramento Urban League in strong support of AB 931.
Yanina Casillas with the Council on American Islamic Relations, California, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights group, in strong support, and also on behalf of the Advancement Project California, in strong support. Thank you.
Nadia Hussein, Council on American Islamic Relations, and I strongly support this bill.
Tunisia Owens, Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, in strong support of AB 931.
My name is Regina, and I'm here to support AB 931, and rest in peace for Jacob Dominguez, who was killed by San Jose PD, unarmed, executed.
My name is Stacey Anderson with the National Council of Negro Women. We strongly support AB 931.
I'm John Rieger with Peace and Freedom Party's Legislative Committee. We urge a strong support of AB 931.
Margot George from the California Public Defenders Association in strong support.
Bruce Schmeeken, Oakland Community Organizations and Coalition for Police Accountability, and we strongly support.
Mashika Allen came up from Santa Clara today with the American Policing Project. We strongly support.
Paul Woods with Consumer Attorneys of California in support.
Ala Moshiri, member of the Baha'i Faith, also associate professor at the UC Davis School of Medicine, and as someone who's responsible for treating these victims in the operating room, I'd like to testify that we're overdue for sensible policing reform. I strongly support AB 931.
I'm Nassim Arfai. I'm also from the Baha'i Faith. I'm also in support of AB 931.
So this is what you give. These are the ones. Richard Sturdivant, Council of Jewish Women, Sacramento section, in strong support of this important public safety measure.
Josh Koizuka with Florin Japanese American Citizens League of Sacramento Valley, strong support for AB 931.
Appreciate it, Grenage from Oakland, California.
Coalition for Police Accountability, mother of Raphael and Luke Grenage, who were killed by Oakland police in 1993.
Hi, I'm Leticia De La Rosa from Bexar, California, one of the deadliest counties, and I am the mother of James De La Rosa, and I support the AB-931. He was murdered by the Bexar Police Department. I got a few names for you guys that were also murdered in Kern County.
I, Rebecca De La Rosa, the aunt of James De La Rosa. My nephew was killed by the Bakersfield Police Department, and I support AB-931.
My name is Josiah Antonio Guzman Lopez, and I support this bill, and I don't want anybody to grow up without a dad.
Like me.
Like me.
Hi, I support this bill because my son suffers trauma in the aftermath after his father was killed by San Jose State police officers, shot twice in the back. Until this day, they've never released anything. They put our case on a gag order, so please support this bill. Kids don't need to be suffering trauma in the aftermath. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandy Sanchez. I'm the mother of Anthony Nunez. He was murdered in front of our home. He was only 18 years old, so please, I support this bill. Thank you.
My name is Jose Reyna, Courage, Oakland, California. I'm here to represent over 500 years of my ancestors being murdered. I support AB 931.
Julissa Gutierrez, and I support this bill.
Angelique Vargas, and I support this bill.
Carolina Cotero, and I support this bill.
My name is Jose Vai with Silicon Valley Debug. I'm here for Omar Obrego, killed by LAPD, and I strongly support this bill, 931.
Hi, my name is Lisa King. I'm in solidarity with Wealth and Disparities in the Black Community, Justice for Mario Woods, and Surge San Francisco, and we're in strong support of passing AB 931. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Rogers with 5 Keys Schools and Programs and LA Mission Homeless Shelter. I would like to encourage all 7 of you not to miss this opportunity to stand up for the lives of your constituents by supporting AB 931 with me. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lester Mesa. I'm a youth activist in the East Los Angeles community, and I've seen personally been pulled over by police, and I've been personally scared for my life and my fellow friends in the car for the reason that I was white, and they treated me nicer comparatively to my darker skinned friends who were pulled over and were taken out of the car. So this is the reason why AB 931 is a bill that will de-escalate those situations.
Good morning, Taylor Jackson with the California Nurses Association, representing over 100,000 nurses statewide, here in strong support of AB 931.
Alicia Lewis on behalf of California Latinas for Reproductive Justice. Freedom from violence is one of the core tenets for true reproductive justice and access.
I'm Alice Lynch with People Acting in Community Together, San Jose, part of PICO. I strongly support this bill.
Hi, Susan Wolf. I'm an activist in San Jose, and I stand with my brothers and sisters. I urge you to do the right thing and pass this bill.
Hello, my name is Jose Luis Pavon. I work with Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice in Oakland, California. I support AB 931. My friends Alex Nieto and Julio Ayala were both unarmed and were unjustly killed by police officers in Northern California. I urge you to please pass this bill. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Tiana Harris. I'm with Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, and I strongly support AB 931.
My name is Yareli. I'm from Oakland. I came in part of Courage, and I came to support AB 931.
Good morning. Thank you again. Marlene Sanchez with Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice. I've had friends who've been murdered by police, and in their memory, we continue to fight for justice and support AB 931.
My name is Teresa Smith. I'm the mother of Cesar Cruz, who was shot 15 times in the back by 5 police officers in Anaheim. And I'm here today supporting this bill instead of celebrating his birthday today. Please pass this bill.
My name is Reverend Kevin Ross. I'm the Senior Minister of Unity of Sacramento, a member of Sacramento ACT, the American Leadership Forum, and the Association for Global New Thought. And I'm a pastor very committed to racial healing, often on the scene to help heal the community, particularly after the shooting death of Stephon Clark. I believe that AB 931 is an opportunity for California to lead the way for the nation to demand that law enforcement officers address their triggers before they pull the trigger, and police in a way to preserve life, uphold dignity, and restores trust between law enforcement officers and communities of color. And I strongly support AB 931.
Good morning. My name is Cecile Nunley. I'm with Black Women Organized for Political Action. We are strongly in support of AB 931. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Pastor Dee Emmert. I'm with St. Paul's Lutheran Church here in Sacramento and Sacramento ACT. I strongly support AB 931.
Ryan McClinton, Sacramento ACT, PICO Network. I urge our senators, our leaders of California to be at the forefront of change across this nation and passing AB 931 and getting this right.
Good morning. My name is Theodore Goodwin. I'm a member of Congregation B'nai Israel of Sacramento, also a member of Sacramento ACT. I'm an attorney and a former administrative law judge. I support this bill wholeheartedly, and I believe that our society has to begin to heal and affirmatively create justice. Thank you.
My name is Mark Jacobs, Director of Community Engagement Program called Youth Explosion, representing 1500 and Rising. I'm also Community Outreach Chair of BAPAC, Black American Political Association. I'm also representing myself and my 2 grandsons in an increasingly confused community wanting change. I strongly support this bill, and I suggest you support it if you want to sleep well at night yourself. Thank you.
My name is Nora Cook. I strongly support this bill.
I'm Rabbi Garth Silberstein. I'm the rabbi of Knesset Israel Torah Center and Orthodox Synagogue here in Sacramento, and I strongly support this bill.
Joe Michael for Equality California in support.
Tina Jackson from Orange County, California. I strongly support this bill, and I'm a veteran, and I'm an active voter, and I will remember those who don't support this bill.
Hi, I'm Alicia Murphy from Santa Cruz and San Jose, a licensed clinical social worker, 2B, and I hope you support this bill. Thank you very much.
James Birch, Policy Coordinator, Anti-Police Terror Project, co-sponsor, proudly in support of this bill. Also here on behalf of Shalem Tyndall, shot 3 times in the back in Oakland, California, and their family supports this bill as well.
Annie Banks, Anti-Police Terror Project, proud to co-sponsor, also Justice Teams Network, both in support of this bill. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Schmidt. I'm a resident of Oakland, California. I'm here on behalf of the 42,000 members of Amnesty International here in California. I am employed by Amnesty International, and California is currently in violation of international law on human rights related to police use of force. This law would bring us closer to the realization of human rights for all people in California, and we support this bill. Thank you.
I'm John Lindsay Poland, the coordinator of the Healing Justice Program, California Healing Justice Program of the American Friends Service Committee, and we strongly support this bill because being in a state of unfounded fear should never be reason to murder someone. Thank you.
Sarada Tangirola from Oakland, California, strongly in support of AB 931.
Good morning.
morning. Eric Henderson from the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights and a member of the San Francisco Sentencing Commission in strong support of this bill. I'm also here on behalf of Jesus Delgado, who was shot 99 times by the San Francisco police.
Philip Wilson, I'm from Vallejo, California. I'm here with Club Stride. I'm here on behalf of one of my friends who was brought into me at work one day, lifeless. And it wasn't until the next morning that I found out that he was murdered at the hands of Vallejo Police Department. And there was an officer that actually stood on the hood of the car and shot down into the vehicle. And they still use the fact that they feared for their life. And I work in a hospital, and we save lives. You know what I mean? That's what we do there. If somebody comes in and they're having a heart attack, I can't just start interventions right then. I have to wait until a doctor puts in orders. We have to follow these orders to a T because the preservation of life is important. If we have to do that in my job, I believe that that should be across the board. Thank you.
My name is Lillian Sanchez. I am the Lattice Christoph Fellow for Amnesty International and a resident of Berkeley, California, and I strongly urge you to support this bill, please.
My name is Lily Rose Longton, and I'm with Amnesty International, and I strongly support this bill.
Hi, my name is C.T. Weber. I'm the Legislative Committee Chair of Peace and Freedom Party of California. The party is on record as being in support of the bill, and we encourage you to do so. We're also California's Poor People's Party, so we need your support.
I'm David Ramirez, a board member with Sacramento Act, Area Congregations Together. I strongly support you to pass this bill today.
Eric Paredes with SEIU Local 2015. We stand in strong support.
Siva Jamali, I'm from Lake County, and I am also an IHSS provider with SEIU Local 2015, and I strongly support this, that you pass this bill. I strongly ask you to say yes, because I come from a rural county and we're having issues with police officers beating people. So just please consider that.
I am Willeen Wilcoxon. I'm from Lake County also. I work for IHSS, EICU. I strongly support AB-931 also on behalf of my son, Eddie Wilson.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Williams from SEIU 2015. I strongly support passing AB-931. I've been pulled over on a traffic by a thing with guns pulled on us, never been in jail, and could not believe it. And they said, "Don't you move," like they were going to shoot us. There was 4 women in the car, and we thought we were goners. The car was not even stolen.
Sonia Krantz from Solano County, SEIU 2015. Strong support of AB 931. Thank you.
My name am backward 50 my family, Mama Chidai, and her shake, and I'm say, adieu to Miss, adieu.
My name is Mario Fernandez, and like my other friends before me, SEIU 2015 is in support of this bill. I also drove from Eureka, California this morning, so please don't let this be in vain. We have the same problems up there that these urban counties are also demanding be resolved. Thank you.
Sarai Escorza with Silicon Valley Debug and in strong support of AB 931.
Andrew Medina with Asian Americans Advancing Justice California in strong support.
Jim Lindberg on behalf of the Friends Committee on Legislation of California, and also here today on behalf of the Lutheran Office of Public Policy in strong support.
Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter in strong support.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Tristan Brown with the California Federation of Teachers on behalf of the 130,000 members who see the trauma that is caused by some of the violence here every day. We urge a support position. Thank you.
Kimberly Rosenberger on behalf of 700,000 members in California with SEIU. We're in support. Thank you.
Andrew Nguyen, Anti-Racism Coalition in Sacramento State Project Rebound. I knew Brandon Smith, and I'm in strong support of AB 931.
My name is Armando Barajas. I'm a member of the American Civil Liberties Union, and I strongly support this bill, and I'm really tired of people of color, men, especially men of color, getting killed. I think it's time that this practice ends.
Mahmoud Zaharia from the Council of American Islamic Relations, and I strongly support this bill.
Chelsea Bell with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and it's time for change. I support it.
Hi, my name is Kendra Jackson. I'm also here with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, Project Rebound, Sacramento State. I'm a social worker, also a mother of an African-American son and an African-American daughter, and I ask you to please pass AB 931. Thank you.
My name is Colby Lenz with Survived and Punished and the California Coalition for Women Prisoners. I'm here on behalf of all of the domestic violence victims, especially women of color killed by police.
Hello, hi, my name is Taylor Lytle. I'm an organizer for CCWP, California Coalition for Women's Prisoners, and I am in strong support of this bill.
My name is Liz Kroboth, and I'm here with Public Health Justice Collective, and we strongly support this bill.
Good morning, Derek Morgan, Oakland resident, and here with the Ella Baker Center. I strongly support this bill as well.
My name is Amber Akemi Pyatt. I'm here on behalf of the Public Health Justice Collective, and we strongly support this bill.
My name is Esteban Nunez. I'm the Sacramento coordinator for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and I strongly support this bill.
My name is Corby Sargent. I'm with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and I support this bill.
My name is Gerald. I represent the Oscar Grant Committee Against Police Brutality. I was here in this chamber, I guess it might have been 3 years ago. There were all of 6 of us addressing a body. Look now, we have been not, we shall be all. We strongly support this bill.
Eddie Carmona, Political Director with Pico, California, co-sponsor and strong support of the bill.
I'm Roy Grimes, former president of Sacramento City School Board and former president of Sacramento County School Board, and a former member of the California State PTA. I want to thank Tristan Brown for AFT supporting this bill, because teachers, the suspensions, and when we talk about schools to prison pipeline, we should see more educators here testifying on behalf of this bill, and I don't see CTA. Roy Grimes in support of the bill.
My name is Aldo Romero. I'm with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition and Sacramento Reinvestment Coalition, and I strongly support this bill.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Herron. I'm with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and I strongly support this bill.
My name is Anita Salvo, and I am a member of the CTA, and I work for the California Department of Education, and I'm a member of SEIU, and I also support the bill.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Antoinette Mosley. I'm a member of the City of Davis Human Relations Commission and the Yolo County Community Services Advisory Board, and I strongly support AB 931. Thank you.
My name is Asha Mosley, and I support this bill.
My name is Teresa Flores, Acting Director with Sacramento ACT, part of Pico, California. Strongly support this bill and urge you to do too.
Hello, my name is Alice Baber Banks. I'm the proud pastor of Christian Fellowship Ministry Church in Del Paso Heights. I am also the faith-based representative for the NAACP and BAPAC. I really urge you to look at this. My father was murdered 50-some years ago. It hasn't changed. So I encourage you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lorna Schrader, and I am a care provider, but more importantly, a mother. I strongly urge you to please pass this bill. Thank you.
Hi, my name is William Kilpania, and I'm a student at Luther Burbank, and I support AB 931.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Elena Santamaria. On behalf of the Building the California Dream Alliance, we support AB 931.
Good morning. My name is Rafael Grillo Avila. I'm a graduate student at UC Berkeley, and I've seen way too many cases of successful de-escalation that the killings on the news make no sense. I stand in support of AB-931. Thank you.
My name is T. Root Williams. I got shot by the police, LAPD, and I strongly support this bill. I hope y'all support this bill.
Carlos Montes Ponce with Sacramento Act. I'm here in support of AB 931 and also part of Pico, California.
Hi, my name is Victor Torres, brother of Jesus Adolfo Delgado, shot 99 times by SFPD. I strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Norma Ruiz. I'm an SF native. I'm also a mother. I please urge you guys have the opportunity to change this moving forward, and I urge you to please pass this bill.
My name's Eli. I'm from San Francisco. I'm 12 years old, and I strongly support this bill. I would like you to pass this.
My name is Alexa Matheson. I'm a resident of Sacramento, and I support AB 931.
Good morning. Georgiana Pisano-Getz with Building the California Dream Alliance in support of AB 931.
Mi nombre es José Manuel Gongrapat. Mi hermano Luis Demetrio Gongrapat lo mató la policía el 7 de abril del 2016. Yo vengo a apoyar esta ley y que se apruebe.
My name is Jose Góngora Pat. I am the brother of Luis Góngora Pat, who was killed by SFPD on April 7, 2016, and I'm here to urge you to pass this bill. My name is Adriana Camarena. I am with Justice and Honor for Luis Góngora Pat, and I am in support of this bill in honor of the 56 people shot by SFPD alone since 2011, 24 of them killed with utter impunity, including Alex Nieto, Amilcar Perez Lopez, Luis Góngora Pat, Mario Woods, Jessica Williams, and Adolfo Delgado. Please pass this bill.
Hi, I'm Victor Picasso with the Black and Brown United San Francisco for Justice, Peace, and Equality. Mothers on the March for Justice San Francisco, and also Frisco Cop Wash. I'm one of the founders. And I urge you guys to really pass this bill, AB 931. It's greatly needed all over California. It's very abusive police departments all over. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Emilio with the Youth Justice Coalition. I'm here on behalf of the family of Jonathan Cuevas, who was killed by sheriffs in Linwood, California. He was shot in the back, then turned over when he was on the ground and shot in the front and killed. Please pass AB 931. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mar Velez. I'm with Communities United for Restored Youth Justice in Oakland, California. A proud co-sponsor of this bill, and also just want to say thank you to all the families that are here. I admire your strength, and we honor you.
Raquel Apolinar, in support of all humans who believe that life is not expendable.
My name is Christopher Vivaral. I see most of the people up there on their phones, so I would like you to pay attention. I'm with YJC, and I'm with Street Poets, and I'm here to pass this bill. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Jordan Barber with the YJC. Strong support.
My name is Tony. I'm with YJC, and I'm also a victim of police brutality and force, I guess, because, yeah, I'm just invited with AB 931.
Hi, I'm Vicki Boyd. I'm with BWAPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action, and also with BAPAC, and we're in high support of AB 931.
Hi, Julian Barrodale, a concerned citizen from Sacramento. Please support this bill. I'm here with the ACLU.
Hello, my name is Alicia Lippman. I'm a lifelong California resident and a passionate voter, and I'm here in support of AB 931 because I can't imagine what it is like to fear that those whose job it is to protect you might actually kill you because of the color of your skin. Please support this bill.
Ben Lubon on behalf of the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce and the California Black Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Dr. Weber, for a magnificent bill. This is an epidemic. I give this testimony or public comment in honor of my father, who was a peace officer, who has prided himself in never firing a sidearm. De-escalation is the philosophy and is the way we need to train our police officers in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
George Ryan, Sacramento, strong support.
Eileen Schnitger, citizen of Sacramento County, where our law enforcement are killing our unarmed citizens, our mentally ill citizens, in support of 931. Thank you, Dr. Weber.
Good morning, Tim Molina, on behalf of Courage Campaign and 1.4 million members in strong support.
Good morning, Mark Philpart with Policy Link and the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color in strong support. Thank you.
All right, if that's all the witnesses in support, so Ms. Weber, I should have our witnesses. Well, in your opening statement, you didn't mention the amendment, so perhaps you could mention before I bring up the witnesses in opposition, the amendments that you're taking.
I mentioned in the opening.
Those of you, apologies, but you'll need to leave the table because the witnesses in opposition will be coming to the table. Okay, go ahead.
I mentioned in the opening that we accepted the committee's amendments. I made an assumption that most of you have them, but if not, the first amendment was one to remove the requirements that officers must foresee that conduct would create a likelihood of death or great bodily injury in order for them to continue to have specified defenses of homicide. And that is under Section 1, number 2, sub B. It's taken from there. So we've struck that out. That's where an officer of ordinary prudence would have foreseen that the conduct would create a likelihood of death or great bodily harm. We've removed that requirement. The other one is that we returned the language that the bill deleted that allows officers to stand their ground and still maintain a right of self-defense claim against homicide. Instead, we add language that says that they must attempt to use de-escalation techniques in those situations, and that is found under Section 2, number C. We specified that the totality of circumstances that were reviewed to determine if an officer acted properly when using force should include all facts actually known to the officers rather than those what would be reasonably known, so that we want to deal with what they know rather than thinking of what we think is reasonably known to them. And we clarified that references to a reasonable peace officer means officer is an objectively reasonable peace officer, and so that has been added underneath number E. I assume most of you got a copy of the changes. Okay, fine. So I just want to put those into the record. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Remember, and before we start with the witnesses in opposition, I want to express my appreciation to everyone in the hearing room for your conduct so far. It's been excellent, and if you could continue that with either this or however other motions you want to make to express your opinions would be great, so that we could have the witnesses speak and have the members on the dais be able to hear them and then engage in some discussion. All right? Appreciate it. And thank you, witnesses in opposition. You may begin.
Madam Chair, members, Randy Perry with Aaron Reed & Associates on behalf of the California Association of Highway Patrol, PORAC, San Francisco Police Officers Association, and the Sheriff's Employee Benevolent Association of San Bernardino, together representing approximately 90,000 of the 120,000 peace officers in California. As amended, the bill continues to create a necessary requirement that is much higher than reasonable. Also, the requirement of no reasonable alternative is unacceptable. The criminal and liability exposure of this aspect of the bill cannot be overstated. However, more importantly, the danger to officers and the public are unconscionable by this bill. The new amendments distract from the requirement that a use of force be necessary. The necessary requirement is a radical departure from criminal and constitutional law that effectively, if reversed, is the calculus for evaluating an officer's use of force. Instead of the floor being lawful if it was reasonable, it is now unlawful or unnecessary if there are any reasonable alternatives. AB 931 is limiting the officer's range of options so that deadly force may only be employed if there is no other option. But, as judged by whom? The sponsors will likely assert deadly force is never necessary, i.e., the language in the bill relating to tactical repositioning. In most use of force situations, there are a range of reasonable options that a reasonable officer could use. Under the new standard, an officer cannot use deadly force if there is any other reasonable alternative, because necessary is defined as the absence of any other reasonable option. In addition, there's a serious contradiction in subsection C, which states that an officer need not retreat or desist for his or her efforts. Yet the definition of reasonable alternatives in the bill includes tactical repositioning, a euphemism for retreat. And that retreat would be able to be used by the defense bar in almost every single case where they would say you could have retreated. Bottom line, while the reasonable alternatives are similar to the factors considered under current reasonable officer standards, the problem is the necessary requirement. If someone can later identify any alternative the officer should have used, then the officer's actions are now unlawful under this bill. Given the science behind perception reaction times throughout the country, waiting until all other options are exhausted will be deadly for officers and citizen victims. We ask that you not support this bill, that we continue to sit down and discuss training issues, de-escalation of force, and other training issues that will help officers throughout the state do a better job than they're doing now, but continue to work together with community groups, with elected leaders, and work towards additional training to help officers out on the street, but do not limit their response to dangers that they are trained in, feel a danger to themselves or to others around them. Thank you.
Next witness.
Thank you. My name is David Mustagny. I'm a lawyer here in town. I've been practicing law for 45 years. I'm also a husband, a father of 4, and a grandfather of 14. I am an expert in force science. I understand the needs of law enforcement, the needs of public safety. I understand what is necessary to provide proper policing, not only in the governmental context, but in the private industry context. I am here on behalf of the California Peace Officers Association, a statewide association representing thousands of police managers. Those police managers are going to be confronted with enforcing a law which is on its face unconstitutional. I would like to read to you from the California Constitution, Section 1, Article 1. All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among those are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. That sets forth the foundation of one's inalienable right, and this is the California Constitution, to defend oneself, to exercise the right of self-defense. The United States Constitution mirrors the same protections to every individual, of every walk of life, of every background. These issues have come before the courts before. In the case of the County of Los Angeles versus Mendez, a very similar issue on provocation was decided, and the United States Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional to enhance or diminish, I should say, the ability of law enforcement officers to defend themselves based upon predicate other acts. We also have in California very highly trained law enforcement officers and managers. This is a subject which by far and away more appropriately should be addressed at the local agency levels through management training, and policies rather than stripping an entire class of citizen of their inalienable right to protect themselves. I agree with my colleague to the right. Once you add necessary and no reasonable alternatives, it becomes a hindsight, second-guessing game that puts not only the officers at danger, but puts the public at danger as well. I would like to say that I read the committee's public policy statement. It was thorough. It set forth the issues, both pro and con. I agree with the opposition issues in there. And simply stated, the United States Constitution, the criminal statutes, and California Constitution, which protects the inalienable right of every citizen to protect themselves, ought not be stripped of law enforcement just because they've chose to serve and protect the public. Those people are from all walks of life and deserve the same constitutional protections that we all have. We also have in California People versus McDonald, which recognized as a right under the Constitution to protect one's own life. We have County of Los Angeles versus Mendez, decided in 2017, which says you cannot dilute the right to protect one's life. On behalf of CPOA, we stand in opposition to the proposed legislation.
Next witness.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in opposition to the bill. The language of the bill speaks to necessity given totality of the circumstances. And the way that language is drafted, just to speak to a statement made by a proponent witness, there was a statement that the language of totality includes or is the facts, only the facts known to the officer, or the facts known to the officer. The language actually says it includes facts known to the officer. It's not exclusive to facts known to the officer. And what this means is that the facts not known to an officer, including whether or not a gun is unloaded and when it is pointed at an officer, could be considered and would make a necessity analysis very difficult to achieve. We think this bill discourages proactive policing by making officers fear the repercussions of split-second decisions. If nothing else, aside from the propriety of the policies, law enforcement agencies will have to change their policies. They'll have to train tens of thousands of officers. This cannot happen. Irrespective of the propriety of such a question, that takes time. That cannot happen overnight. The bill makes no accommodation for the reality that this training would have to take place. We, as a matter of course, ask and demand officers to run toward danger and sacrifice their safety. We feel it's inappropriate to do so with an open question posed by this bill as to whether an after-effect analysis will vindicate their actions. For those reasons, we ask for your no vote.
Next witness, thanks.
Yes, Madam Chair, members, Jonathan Feldman with the California Police Chiefs Association. I'll be brief and not repetitive. We want to make it clear from the Police Chiefs Association that anytime there's a loss of life, it's tragic. We are willing to be part of a dialogue around use of force and work cooperatively to reduce the numbers of officer-involved shootings in the state. Right now, departments across the state are working to find solutions actively through education, training, and policies, through outreach. I don't know if everyone understands how much law enforcement has shifted over the last 7, 8, 9 years, how much we've looked inward to find out how we can do better, how we can reach these communities and be community police that we want to be and are and should be. However, 931 is a dangerous proposal. What it fails to understand is that the current legal standard is meant to look at a split-second decision by an officer. As the Supreme Court has understood in defining the current legal standard, that there has to be an allowance for the fact that police officers are required to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force that is necessary in a particular situation. Anything above that puts our officers in an untenable position, and for that reason, we are opposed.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Shalisa Williams on behalf of San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And I don't need to echo what my colleagues have said. We are in opposition of this bill. And also on behalf of San Diego Sheriff's Department, who was not able to attend, they are also in opposition. And if I can just give a little background, I've been a law enforcement officer for 24 years. I've worked at the schools. I was a TAC officer at our academy, teaching officers how to de-escalate. So I just want to just show that I'm here in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition can be at the mic.
Madam Chair and members, Matthew Cyberling on behalf of the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs and the Los Angeles Police Protective League. I've also been asked to reflect the opposition of the California Statewide Law Enforcement Association, the Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs, the Sacramento Deputy Sheriffs Association, the Long Beach Police Officers Association, and the Fraternal Order of Police, all of whom are also opposed. Thank you.
Brandon Up on behalf of Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonnell in opposition.
John Lovell on behalf of the California College and University Police Chiefs, the California Narcotic Officers Association, and the Los Angeles County Professional Peace Officers Association, all in opposition.
Danielle Sanchez on behalf of the Chief Probation Officers of California, regrettably in opposition, but look forward to continuing the very productive discussions we've been having with Dr. Weber's office. Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair. Ryan Sherman with the Riverside Sheriff's Association, also in opposition.
Roxana Beck-Mohammadi on behalf of the Law Enforcement Managers Association of Sacramento County, in opposition.
All right, any other witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, do we have questions or comments on the dais? Senator Weiner, Senator Mitchell, and Senator Stone. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank the author for bringing this important bill forward. I know it's not easy. This is it is a challenging issue on so many levels. And I also want to thank our committee, the chair, and also particularly committee staff for, I know, working extremely hard with the author, with the sponsors, to make sure that this bill is as good as it can be and is doing exactly what it's intended to do. In a sense, this bill in some ways, the issue is it's hard, but it's not very hard. It's not very hard in the sense that we need to reduce the number of shootings, period. There are too many shootings happening, and we, it is time to reevaluate the standard for use of lethal force in California. The challenging part, of course, is getting it right. You want the bill to make sure that we are reducing the number of shootings, keeping all communities safe, keeping police officers safe, and that is the needle that needs to be threaded. I come at this as someone who has worked with the police for many, many years as a community activist, as a neighborhood association president, as a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and now as a senator. And I know this is an incredibly, incredibly difficult job on so many levels. We expect our police officers to keep everyone safe. More and more police officers are on the front lines of dealing with the mental health crisis, with the drug addiction crisis, because we've failed as a society to handle these issues in a healthcare way. So we've effectively criminalized these problems, and we expect our police officers to just handle it. It is a very, very hard job. I think that this bill, particularly as amended, does thread the needle, and I support it. I understand the concerns of the opposition, and I know there will be continuing discussions to make sure that this really gets it right. But I think that, particularly with the amendments, I think it makes, to me, when I read this, clear that, of course, it's what is known to the officer at the time. If there's something that the officer could not have known about, that is not part of the standard. I think that the drafting of the bill, with all due respect to the opposition, I think does get it right. The bill emphasizes alternatives to use of lethal force and de-escalation. And I think everyone agrees that de-escalation is incredibly important. And I know in San Francisco and elsewhere, increasingly emphasize training on de-escalation and considering alternatives, understanding that things move very, very fast. And I don't think anyone is expecting an officer to be able to sit down and do some deep analysis of, in the next 0.2 seconds, is there an alternative? But, with clear policies, with clear law, with clear training, I think that we can move towards de-escalation, considering alternatives, again, with the goal of reducing the number of shootings. So I know there will be continuing conversations, but I will be voting in favor of AB-931. I may need to run to another committee, so if I'm not here for the vote, I'll add on later. Thank you.
Senator Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Happy Juneteenth, Dr. Weber. How ironic it is that we're having this conversation on that historic day. Words are very powerful. And as I read the bill analyses, the letters of support and opposition, I'm looking very carefully at the way people phrase their perspective on the bill. And I listened to testimony very carefully also. Dr. Weber, do you assert that deadly force is never appropriate?
No, in fact, we have not taken away the option of deadly force. We've just defined when it should occur.
Thank you. When the bill was drafted by Ledge Counsel, was there any concern expressed by Ledge Counsel around the constitutionality of the language in AB 931?
No, Ledge Counsel has not expressed that to any of us ever. Yeah.
Thank you. With regard to some of the comments made, but mainly as I read the letters and arguments of opposition, in looking at the letter provided to us by the Law Enforcement Managers Association, it states that the bill will create a larger scale issue where criminals are no longer caught after committing their crimes, increasing the danger to other citizens in the area. And I heard there was a representative from that organization through the chair, if they could come forward, because I'd like for them to address their comments. The representative from the Law Enforcement Managers Association.
Who is that?
Of Sacramento County.
Of Sacramento County. Your letterhead doesn't say that, but I'm assuming this is your letter. Is Todd Thiessen the president?
So David Quintana usually would be answering these questions, and so he's not here at the moment, so I'm just here to simply vocalize our opposition.
So are you in a position to answer a question that's listed in the letter?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
You still have the floor, Senator Mitchell.
I have to kind of regroup. I've just never experienced that. And, well, let me just say my question for the record, and then maybe at some point someone can answer for me. So the letter states that criminals will no longer be caught after committing their crimes. And so my question really was to this organization, if they were suggesting that an effort to add a skill set like de-escalation or perhaps implicit bias training also would continue to create an opportunity where crimes would be committed and the entire society would be at risk. I'll move on. The argument in the analysis from the Police Chiefs Association, Mr. Feldman, you all state, I appreciate that you make it clear that anytime there's a loss of life is tragic, and that, quote, you are willing to work on and be part of this dialogue around use of force and work cooperatively to find solutions. I'm curious about what proposals either you've sponsored or supported in that vein. You talked about also in your oral testimony that a number of departments are already working to find ways through education, training, and policies. If you can give me some examples of those, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
If your argument is that that ongoing work would suggest that it's happening and this bill isn't necessary, if you're asking me to not vote on this bill, I'd like to know what those examples are.
You may respond, Mr.
Through the chair. Thank you for the question. We have been on the record supporting de-escalation training, crisis intervention training, procedural bias training, implicit racial bias training. I mean, so those are examples of things that we've supported in this building to address the type of situations that we're talking about, to move away, find ways to mitigate or reduce the number of officer-involved shootings that are out there. There are individual chiefs that have been part of work groups, part of President Obama's 21st Century Task Force on Policing, that have helped create the 6 pillars of modern policing that we've all been adopting either through local policies, community outreach events, especially to youth, you know, getting into the high schools, talking to disadvantaged minority youth when they're, you know, at a younger age, so that their interactions with law enforcement are not just in the most severe crisis moments when you're not going to develop a bond or trust, to talk to them early on so that they have an experience with law enforcement that's positive. So starting to try and instill those types of relationships early on, those are things that we've done.
Which we acknowledge take time. That's
yes,
a culture
absolutely.
shift.
It's a cultural generational shift that's going to take time, and it's things that we're willing to do. As far as things that we're willing to continue to work on, I mean, exactly what I said, education, training, policies. We think that this legal standard has been set by the courts. It's clear, it's defined. It understands the types of situations that we're talking about, and shifting this legal burden beyond what's been established is something that gives us grave concern.
And it's interesting you should reference President Obama's task force, because Dr. Weber wasn't able to attend, and so I attended a couple of their meetings in Washington, D.C. As a co-author of a previous bill she carried. And what struck me when I attended, that there was not there was one law enforcement representative from California, and he was the BART chief of police. I didn't see one California chief of police at those meetings. So I had no idea that you all were engaged and had begun to accept those policy recommendations, because there was nobody there, which was striking to me as a California policymaker. So I'm glad to know that that's what you all are working on. Through the chair, if you.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
There have been numerous police chiefs that have traveled to D.C. over the years in the prior administration to work on policing issues. Okay. And not just that one, in a number of different ways.
Okay.
I've had dozens of police chiefs.
That's good to know, because the specific gathering you mentioned, I was there. So that's great to know that they've traveled and are engaging in other ways. I would hope that they would,
yes,
given California's population. Thirdly, I'd look at the PORAC comments in the analysis. I'm on page 14 of a 15-page analysis, where they, of course, state their opposition and state the legislation fails to take into account that imposing a new standard for use of deadly force would require that every police officer in the state of California be retrained. And so my question for PORAC is it a mere matter of costs? And from your perspective, what would constitute or justify retraining of police officers? And should we begin to reevaluate all post-training if training is the only issue?
Madam Chair and members, Aaron Reed representing PORAC. The answer to that question is yes, you have to retrain over 100,000 police officers, and you need to do it very, very fast, hopefully before the bill became law. Otherwise, you find officers in violation not really knowing. So the training is huge. It's going to be a difficult task to train that many people that fast, and there's no money in the bill to do that. And the budget for post has been basically static. In fact, it was cut. I think this legislature restored a little bit of it this year, yes, but not enough.
And so help me understand from your perspective, we know that training is essential, which is why this legislature has been sensitive to that issue. But at what point would law enforcement acknowledge that retraining or a revamping on your training is necessary? What issue from your perspective would warrant perhaps you all coming to the table and putting forward a bill or asking for augmentation to post-training? Because given the numbers we're talking about, it seems to me focusing on this issue has got to be at the top of the list. But if not, I'm just curious from your perspective.
There are a number of issues, and you know yourself, you've seen me testify in support of bills for training on mental health. Senator Bell's legislation, we've done that. And we've supported other training for bias training. We've done that. And
so how is that being, and I appreciate it's a huge force. I represent Los Angeles under the leadership of the former police commission chair. He found a way to privately raise dollars for implicit bias training for LAPD. I don't know that that's necessarily appropriate, but he had the capacity and that's what he did. And so from your perspective, how have you rolled in the mental health training? We're all clear that all the police can't come off the street for a period of time to be trained, but how have you incorporated the mental health training into the workforce? Because maybe we should learn something from that to then apply to this.
in the case of the CHP, which I'm very familiar with, we've come to the legislature and asked for an augmentation for training, and that was granted because we had to pay for it because we're dealing with 40 hours of additional training. That's a whole week for every single officer, several thousand, 7,000 officers.
The Highway Patrol also, in their first year of having to do training around mental health, found it within their own budget to do. I've appreciated that we've augmented it, but when law enforcement makes it a priority, we find a way. And so I think my point of asking these questions is, as you assert you've come to the table, you're working on policies. I've sat on public safety committee since I was elected, and I can count on one hand the number of times law enforcement has come to the table to truly collaboratively address issues. You know, perhaps mental health is politically an easier pill to swallow than race-based bias. And I get that, and we all have work to do. But that's why I'm really asking the question sincerely, to figure out how do we move from point A to point B as opposed to continuing to clash when these bills come up. So that's why I asked the question. I appreciate you coming forward to answer me on behalf of PORAC. I will, am a co-sponsor, Madam Chair, and will be supporting the bill today. I asked these questions of the opposition not to be an irritant to them, although I am so clear that I am, but to really begin to have a deeper level conversation about how we come to solution. Because to simply have the bills introduced, to simply read the opposition, to read, language about how this bill is dangerous, this inflammatory language around criminals will not be stopped, no arrests will take place, all law enforcement lives will be at risk, is not helpful. It's not. I question its accuracy, that's me, and perhaps my own implicit bias, but it's not helpful to advance a discussion around a public policy crisis in California and this country. And so I'm really hoping that we can continue to have a more meaningful dialogue and try to find solutions. If the only issue you have with the bill is a lack of resources for training, we could talk about that. We could talk about that. But don't say that if that's not the fundamental issue. If the issue is resources for training, let's say that. At some point, perhaps we need to evaluate all of post-training, and perhaps all of post-training. It's not like you just take one class and then you get it. Perhaps all of post-training needs to have a lens of bias and dealing with different communities and dealing with the reality of who law enforcement confronts on the streets every day to day. We've done a piecemeal approach to augmenting posts. Perhaps the next piece of legislation is a complete evaluation of current post training. Maybe that's the issue in terms of on the front end, what we're expecting law enforcement to step up to and be able to provide. Proud to support the bill today, Dr. Weber.
So we have Senator Stone, Senator Jackson, and Senator Bradford.
Thank you, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank all the people that came to testify today, and for those of you that have lost loved ones, my condolences to your family or your friends. And we've certainly heard your perspective, and it's very moving. And I've been an elected official now for 26 years, and one of the most distressing calls that we get as elected officials is when members of our public safety agencies have been murdered. Most recently, a couple years ago in Palm Springs, where I proudly represent, we had two officers, Mr. Gil Vega and Leslie Zarebny. They were called to a house where there was allegedly a armed person that was being threatening. And when they approached the door was suddenly opened, and a man opened fire, murdering both of them. They never had the time to consider the reasonableness of the situation because things happen in a split second. In the city of Temecula, when I was mayor in 1995, we had our first police officer killed in the line of duty, Mr. Kent Hinegart. It was at a domestic violence call. Mr. Hinegart apprehended the suspect, who said he needed to get some things out of the trunk to take with him to jail, and pulled out a shotgun and fatally injured Mr. Hinegart. Across the street once a year, we gather with law enforcement throughout the state, and we unite at the Peace Officers Memorial to memorialize those officers that have been killed in the line of duty throughout the state of California. This year, we're up to 8 officers that have been killed. You know, when you become a police officer, and my uncle was a sergeant, lieutenant with LAPD, actually, and went through extensive training, taught at the academy, and actually was a sergeant. You know, we have a natural instinct. It's called the fight or flight syndrome. When we go into a dangerous situation, it's not something that you can train for. It's an autonomic nervous system response where your heart responds to a lot of adrenaline and you're very alert. A lot of blood goes to the brain because you're in a position where you can be harmed. And you have, in many cases, a split second to make a decision. And in that split second, you've got to make the right decision. That's hopefully the right decision for everyone involved. But we all know that we're humans, and we can always Monday morning quarterback after a situation. But it's my concern that the way the bill is written today, that I know that even at present day, and I think PORAC can certainly confirm this, and other police agencies can confirm this, there is a difficulty for chiefs of police, sheriffs of counties, CHP, to find qualified people that can end up being peace officers in the state of California. I know the sheriff in Riverside County is less than 1% that apply actually get the job. And when a police officer or a peace officer leaves their house every morning, and I've seen it many times where we go to awards and you hear them say that they kiss their wives and they kiss their children with the hopes that they're going to come home that night. And sometimes they don't. It's an incredible responsibility. And my concern is that if we do not allow peace officers to have unfettered abilities to protect themselves against people that may want to take their lives, that we will see less applicants for public safety. I'm strongly supportive of training. My colleague, I've heard her talk many times about implicit and explicit bias. We should encourage more training. We should encourage more training about de-escalation. If there is time to de-escalate, if somebody is pulling what appears to be a weapon, is not following orders, there may not be time for that de-escalation training. People also need to respect law enforcement, and when they give a command, they need to listen to the command. Because I don't believe that police officers wake up and go out and decide, I think I want to go kill somebody today. So, you know, these are my thoughts, and I respected you when you were speaking. I hope you'll respect me when I'm speaking. But I think we have a tremendous core of public safety officials that put their lives on the line every day to make sure that when I call 911 because somebody's busting a window in my house in the middle of the night, that I'm going to have somebody there that's going to put their life on the line to protect me and my family. And I believe that if this bill is passed in its present form, I believe the police officers are not going to rush to a scene to protect me or my family, because they are not going to want to put their lives on the line if they're going to be held in a criminal sense for taking somebody's life in a public safety situation where they believe that it is a righteous situation for them to protect me, members of my family, or my constituents. And for those reasons, I respectfully can't support the bill today.
You've been great so far. Please continue, and we will now have Senator Jackson and then Senator Bradford.
Thank you very much. And you know, I think we all agree that we don't want to put police officers in harm's way, but we don't want to put the public in harm's way. And I think that this isn't an all or nothing situation. It's not either the police officers or members of the public. And I noted, as my colleague was saying, you know, when you kiss your spouse goodbye who's going to work as a police officer, you wonder if they're going to come home. But I would suspect, given the statistics that I've read here, there are a lot of black families who, when they kiss their kids goodbye during the day, particularly young black men, they have the same fear. And that's not what this country's supposed to be about. I mean, we're here in the state, we can't do a whole lot about the inane federal policies that are stripping children from their parents at the border. That's a federal issue, and one that I wish we could do more for. But we do have the ability here to expect that not only our police officers are going to be safe in their jobs, but that our community, and the question when you call the police, and I know this has occurred even in my own community, you call the police because you have a situation at home where you need intervention from public safety officials. You have a child who's gone a little bit off the rails, or a bad drug reaction by a family member, or someone is in a domestic violence situation. You want to feel like when you call law enforcement, they're going to help you resolve the problem and not end up either badly injuring someone or being shot themselves or shooting someone. And, you know, the statistics here are just so troubling that in California in 2017, officers shot and killed 162 people in California, only half of whom were armed with guns. So you got to ask yourself, what's going on here? And that's really, I think, why we're all here. We want to figure out what can we do to make our communities safer, and to make the job for law enforcement safer. And I would submit that my colleagues' concerns about a guy who goes into the trunk of his car and pulls out a shotgun and starts shooting people, that to me is the best argument you can make for better gun control. So I don't know if we're going to get that far. You know, we have some issues that we have to address when that comes to that issue, but that situation was never going to be resolved differently. But we do have situations where we have law enforcement who's called to an event, and the first instinct, it would seem to me, has got to be to how do you resolve this favorably for everybody, rather than how are we going to end up with people in the hospital or people dead. So for me, it's got to be a culture shift. We're talking about a culture shift here, and I have right here, I happen to have access to the people who are doing post, who are doing the training. And there is some substantial training out there to do de-escalation. I want to thank you for recognizing that there are ways to resolve these problems that don't call for the use of deadly force. And that if we train our law enforcement people so that when that adrenaline starts to pump, because it will, that they know how to take steps to de-escalate a situation. So I'll use as an example, the whole issue with domestic violence used to be, and probably still is, the most dangerous call that law enforcement gets, because you have people whose emotions are heightened, and if there's a firearm or a weapon available. So when we started adding women to the police force, and women going out on these domestic violence calls, we saw a significant de-escalation and a more favorable set of results because the women who would go in had the ability, I'm not quite sure what it was, to sort of ramp things down a little bit. And I think that's what we're looking for. We want better results when law enforcement goes up. Better results for law enforcement. I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement. I have great regard for these people, and they do put themselves on the line. But I would submit to you that their goal is to try to keep the public safe. And so it's that mindset that we need to start developing in greater numbers. And, you know, when you look at these statistics, I mean, police in Kern County have killed more people per capita than in any other United States county. And I don't necessarily, I mean, these are just facts that I think are unrefutable. And then studies show police kill unarmed young black men at more than 20 times the rate they kill young white men. That's just a staggering statistic. And so I'm sort of in a plaintiff element here where I want us all to be safer. And I think that the measures and the amendments that the author has taken, I think it now creates a strong bill. I don't think it's an all or nothing. Why should it be all or nothing that either police are going to be able to use deadly force or they're going to get killed because they're not able to use deadly force? I don't think that's I mean, take a look at Seattle. Take a look at Seattle. They were under a consent decree. And they figured it out, and in fact, their results now are there's less violence and fewer police officers are being killed. There's something going on there that seems to be right. And I haven't heard anybody talk about that here today. And you know, why reinvent the wheel? Let's take a look at what they're doing in Seattle. And I think what they're doing is they're doing that training that we're all talking about is appropriate. And I think with a bill like this, it's going to force the discussion. Rather than say we might, we will, it's going to force us to put more money into this training that is critically important. And it's going to change a culture that needs to be changed. And so with that, I want to keep our law enforcement safe, and I believe when we do this kind of training, we will be able to do that when the goal is to try to de-escalate to the extent possible. And there's nothing in this bill that I read that says you can't use deadly force if you deem it is necessary to protect yourself or others. But you got to recognize that that isn't the only answer here, and that we've got to try other things to the extent possible. And so I want to thank the author. I appreciate all the efforts that you've taken. I appreciate the opportunity to express my position on this, because when the bill first came out, I really wasn't sure I could support this. But I think you've created that balance. Our public safety people, they're there to protect us, and we just want to make sure that's why they're there. And so with that, I will be happy to move the bill, Madam Chair.
As amended, of course.
As amended.
Senator Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first want to thank Dr. Weber for this common sense approach to addressing a real issue, not only in California, but across this nation as it relates to law enforcement interaction, especially with people of color. It always blows me away when law enforcement fear for their life only when they're facing black and brown people. Just a week after Stephon Clark was murdered in the South, law enforcement encountered a white man with a rifle, who not only had a rifle, but fired at them several times. That individual is home safe today. And it blows me away that black and brown men and women don't even get to the jail. They don't even get a chance to be arrested. I'm all for better training, but why isn't it training needed when you encounter white folks? You only need better training when you encounter black and brown people. There's an implicit bias in law enforcement in this country, and we must admit to it before we can address the problem. And I want to talk about this statute that has been in place since 1872. If you know it historically, it was only enacted after slavery. And almost every draconian law on the books for enforcement, from vagrancy to truancy to the use of deadly force, was only enacted in this country after slavery as another way of suppressing black people in this country. And that mindset has not changed to this day. I have friends and family who are in law enforcement, but they will tell you there is no reverence for life when it comes to black men in this country when facing the majority of law enforcement. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, so I saw both sides of law enforcement. And I saw the difference in interacting when I was with my white friends versus when I was with my black friends. And it's a stark difference. I also chaired the Select Committee on Boys and Men of Color. And just across the hall, 4 years ago, we had a hearing. And we had a hearing dealing with police interaction with black and brown. And we had a police chief who testified. And he says, and we asked him, what was the toughest thing you had to do as a police chief? And he sat there for a minute and he says, when my 16-year-old got his driver's license, he says, I had to sit him down and tell him what he should and should not do, not when, if he encounters law enforcement, but when he encounters law enforcement. That police chief was black. And he sat there and said, my white colleagues do not have to have that same discussion with their sons and daughters when they get their driver's license. So, folks, there's something wrong here in this country. This is a common sense measure to address a issue of, like you say, I'm going to just lay it out. It's racism, folks. We don't have a problem with law enforcement. We got a problem with racism in this country. And until we address that, we're going to continue to have these problems. So I'm honored to be a co-author of this bill, and I'm honored to support it as well. So thank you.
Were there any other comments from the dais? All right. So I appreciate the questions and discussion so far by my colleagues, and also want to give my thanks to those of you in the hearing room for your decorum, and Ms. Weber, thank you for your patience. It's been a long hearing. This is obviously a charged issue, but I think I want to thank you for bringing this bill before us, because I do think that we have an obligation to review our penal code statutes, and as been pointed out so far, the use of force statute related to police officers was enacted in 1872. And that statute, which is California Penal Code 196, is the single oldest unamended law enforcement use of force statute in the US of A. So it is appropriate for us to relook at it. And I think that the amendments that our staff, in working with various experts and also the author, have come up with, do a great deal to help to clarify the bill and ensure that the bill conforms to the standards that were set forth in 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases, Tennessee versus Garner and Graham versus Connor. And basically in those rulings, the Supreme Court laid out appropriate protocols that states and law enforcement should, in effect, follow. And what this bill would do is update California's code to do so. And regarding the part of reasonable alternatives, under the existing standards, reasonable peace officers acting under the totality of the circumstances already have to use reasonable alternatives to deadly force. So really, the bill does not greatly vary from what is existing, except for some clarification. So I bring that up because I appreciate that. What I want to express is that while my colleagues have very eloquently expressed the experience of what it is like to be black and brown in our state and in our country, and I am not black or brown, so while I have observed that, I've not personally experienced it, I also want to express that I think all of us appreciate, as much as we can be very angry and frustrated and have many other emotions when we see officers use force, I think we also appreciate that our law enforcement officials take their lives in their hands every day when they go to work. And so it creates this type of, on all sides of the issue, very, very, very deep-seated feelings. And I recall very well when I took office in 2009, the shooting down of 4 officers in Oakland in really cold-blooded murder. And it really brought home for me just how real it was, how officers take their life in their hands every day. But what we are trying to do and what the author, I think, is trying, not think, I know, is trying to do, and you supporters, in this change, is to make it safer for all of us, for officers and for residents. And while we can hold true and acknowledge that all of our law enforcement officers take their lives in their hands every day when they walk out the door, we don't want anyone else to feel like their lives is somehow at risk every time they walk out the door. And so by trying to address this very outdated statute that we have, and we know that to really make the improvements that are intended, yes, we have to revise the training that we do of law enforcement, and it will take time. And so I suppose I would ask our law enforcement officials who oppose the bill whether, and if they have spoken to the author, about whether a delayed implementation that gives us the ability to build in the training, would they then be more receptive? And certainly that's something that could still be discussed if this bill moves on from this committee, which I think it is likely to do so today. And I will be recommending a aye vote on the bill, and I do so both because of, as I stated, the fact that the existing statute has not been changed in such a long period of time, because of the Supreme Court rulings for which this bill would put us more in conformance under, and because under the provisions of this bill, the use of deadly force by a peace officer does not I'm losing my articulation here. It does not in any way negate any of the other statutes that we have, for example, Penal Code 197, or the Judicial Council of California's criminal jury instruction around justifiable homicide. It does not negate any of those. And in fact, it brings up so that police officers are more protected than just regular individuals in terms of what would be considered a justifiable use of homicide. So I think with all of that, this is a reasonable change, and yes, we will need more training, and while the budget, and our budget chair didn't mention this, while the budget does have a $20 million increase to post-training, I think there is an appreciation that that would probably not be adequate, and there would have to be additional, but I think that's the type of conversation that we can continue as we move forward. So I know there's a motion on the bill, and I know that also a lot of members had to go and present in other committees. That's what happens on a day like today. It is not because they don't have an interest in the bill. It's just that there's at least 4 other committees going on concurrently, and members have got to present. So, but we will take a roll call on the, sorry, I need to have Assemblymember Weber close, and then we will have a roll call on the bill as amended. So Assemblymember Weber.
Yes, Madam Chair and members, first of all, let me thank everyone who came today for their input and their concern from throughout California. We had a number of persons who drove all night to get here. I really want to thank the members who came to, the individuals who came to support the bill. You know, some departments in California have already realized they have an issue and have begun to hold themselves to a higher standard and many have begun to deal with the issue of de-escalation. In those departments, we see a different change, and not only in terms of the morale of the individuals who are there, but also the results in terms of fewer people being killed, fewer officers being shot, and those kinds of things, which attest to the fact that clearly a change is necessary, and it's a positive thing that needs to take place. You know, most of you know my body of work in this building, you know, and where I came from in terms of the university. So most things I don't do lightly, and I don't do without purpose and without meaning. And this topic I take very seriously, not only just as a legislator, but as an African American and as a mother. It is extremely important to me that we look at what we have done and where we are. All of my life, almost 70 years now, all of my life, I have lived with the fact that my young men in my community are afraid. I've read Owen Dotson's poem in 1940, A Black Mother Praying, which talks about watching the light being snatched from her son's eyes in the streets and being concerned about the brutality that was existing in the 1940s. So we have dealt with this issue for many, many years, and it's fortunate now that we're bringing it forward to hopefully provide some direction and light as to what we need to talk about. You know, we have done everything I think possible in conversation as we begin to see what is happening. African Americans have known this their whole life. And it has become obviously apparent to the general public now because of cell phones and videos and things that people can see that they've not seen before. But we've known this all of our lives. In fact, when you look at almost every race riot that has occurred in California and somewhere in the nation, it is because of some police action that people consider to be unjust. And therefore, as a result, the people express themselves publicly, but not really being able to affect change. We have the opportunity to affect change right now. And this is not about taking away officers' right to use deadly force when it is necessary and when there is imminent danger, but talks about a respect for all life, and that's what is extremely important. We often have folks talk about what happens in our communities when an officer goes down, and that is an unfortunate situation. I've dealt with that in San Diego a couple of times, even as an elected official. But I've probably dealt more often with when young folks have been shot in the streets by officers more than I've dealt with that. And either case, it is unacceptable. But we have to find a way in which we can bring some sense of decency and some type of effective policing that's important. To hear people say that officers need unfettered ability to use force is, to me, it's just totally irresponsible and unacceptable, because we train officers to be responsible in presenting themselves and dealing with the issue, and they should not have unfettered opportunity just to use force. It should be used because they're well trained and they want to protect the public, themselves as well as the people in the public. And I believe that happens most of the time. I know it happens in other communities because we see it oftentimes on television. We see what happens when police officers move in certain communities and how it's handled effectively so that no one is hurt in the end. We don't always see that in communities of people of color. And so it is extremely important that we talk about how we're going to move forward. This bill is a reasonable alternative. I was shocked when I was presented with this bill because I thought that was a standard that we use in California, that basically lethal force was used when you didn't have any other choice. And that's what I thought, because that to me would be reasonable. But it's not in terms of how the courts look at it. And so as a result, I was shocked when I was presented with this opportunity for this bill to do this. This is a difficult bill, obviously, because we all have friends on both sides of the situation. We all have officers we respect. We know how difficult the job is. We know how hard it is at the same time. But we also have communities of folks who are afraid of officers. And in my mind, they don't even take advantage of what public safety can offer them out of fear that if they call the police, the situation will be worse and not better. And so I've seen communities to not have the advantage of good policing because they're afraid of the officers that they call. I recognize this is a hard case, and for that reason, I put the $25 million in the budget to deal with police training and de-escalation, because I know there's going to be a need for some change that's there and that we need to move forward. But we can't just stand back and say it's too difficult, it's too hard, because I can't put a price on the life of a child. I can't put a price on the life of anyone in this community, whether it's $25 million or whatever it is. And I don't think any one of you up there would put a price on the life of yourself or, more importantly, your children and your neighbors. You would not do that because you cannot. And so, as I look at California, I was shocked at the number of shootings we've had. I was shocked that we were like at the top, given all the technology and the wonders of California, and that we all brag that we're not in Mississippi and Alabama. And at the same time, I see us at the top, and it just blows me away because I know that we can do better. And I think this bill is a step in that direction to help us to do better. And we've had plenty of conversations to say, yes, we should do, yes, we should not. But I think most of us realize without some form of legislation to basically force the agenda and make us do better, it will not happen. I respectfully ask for an aye vote for AB 931.
Thank you, Assemblymember Weber. We'll now have a roll call on the bill.
The motion is do pass as amended to appropriations. Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Bradford? Aye. Bradford, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Stone? Weiner? Aye. Weiner, aye.
We will keep the roll open. It does have enough votes to pass, but we'll keep the roll open for our missing member.
Thank you very much.